All right, we're back with more NBA coverage, and to start things out, earlier in the week, the Spurs would sign Bismack Biyombo. In all honesty, this pickup is probably a non-story. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know how much it truly helps or hurts the Spurs, given what they've already built over the course of this offseason through the draft and through free agency. He's not a player that's going to cost a lot, and he essentially is what he is at this point. I will say, though, to his benefit, if anything, he serves as an additional body that they can use in the event that one of their core centers goes out. You know, whether it be Wembanyama, you obviously don't want a repeat of him getting hurt. But whether it be for Wembanyama or Kornet, to have a kind of backup plan that is another big body per se in terms of frame. He's a stockier center because he's not even as tall as both Kornet and Wembanyama are. He's only 6'8" at this point, but at 255 pounds, the ratio there is definitely more of a compact build. So when you're talking about him playing defense on this front in, I guess, the heat of garbage time, that could give the Spurs a slight edge. But outside of that, again, I'm not sure. He's not a player that's going to log a bunch of time. I mean, I guess he was playing a decent amount last season, but again, that was due to injury. So, again, there's nothing that they really lose or gain from having him on the squad. I guess he's got the familiarity, and again, it always helps to have that insurance. But they're not going to be asking him to do a ton, and you're still going to be left with him being a limitation, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Again, that's to be expected at this point from someone who is pretty much 33 years old at this point. There's no reverting back to any sort of past prime or whatever. You have to have an idea, if you're the Spurs, of exactly what you're getting. And I suppose that they understand that point. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone to pick him back up. We have a ton of new developments in this Kawhi Leonard and Clippers situation. Because if the shit wasn't already potentially fucked, if everything that is being alleged is true at this point, there's even more information piling up that potentially links other people in the Clippers organization as guilty parties here, and if true, serves as even more damning evidence of a circumvention of the salary cap. Again, if true, these are allegations. But my goodness, at the rate it's going, they are literally at this point lining up ducks in a fucking row. I know that the NBA is going to want to look at every single thing in full before they make a ruling or a decision on anything. I understand that. But at the same time, when it is that easy to pinpoint connections of some kind across all of these different situations and circumstances, that is not the greatest of looks. And the Clippers were open to being investigated. And now all of this stuff that seems to be so coincidental to the point where they have to be guilty is now coming into play. And again, Obviously, we will still have to see whether or not it's all true and if there is truly a smoking gun in all of this. But my goodness, you are just making yourselves look worse and worse on a consistent basis. So to start off the chain of new developments and reports, we have this quote here from Toperick's article for Forbes, which states that, quote, Torrey also reported that Dennis Wong, a Clippers minority owner and Ballmer's college roommate, invested $1.99 million into Aspiration in December of 2022. Leonard received his quarterly $1.75 million payment 9 days later, while Aspiration laid off 20% of its employees on the same day. End quote. Major curveball. Now, again, I saw this initially and I was like, whoa, that's what's going on here. I was trying to figure out and see a little more information about it before addressing it completely. And I guess with this article or these slew of articles here, we got that. So again, allegedly, you have somebody who is even further involved not only with the Clippers organization, but also with Steve Ballmer, if this is a fucking college connection, pouring even more money into this company. Now, again, this is December of 2022, so again, at this point, they were only like a few more months or so removed from needing to lay off a massive amount of people and also start up this trial that they had that would, again, eventually end this year, as I reported in the last cycle of Kawhi news we had about this, in which they are now currently bankrupt and defunct as a company. So even if that seems like a small chunk of money, you could surmise that at this point of time, they needed it. And again, if this happens to be a truth, it is highly suspicious that you not only have Ballmer, again, obviously he contributed a lot of money to the company just generally, at least he'll tell you that. But now you also have another person with a minority share in the same company doing the same thing on a lesser scale. And then obviously this quote goes on to mention that his overall payment, because again, according to what I detailed in the last video, this was around like $7 million per year or so, and maybe even more through even more reports from Torrey at this point. Potentially could be even higher than that, but the baseline was $7 million like per year or something. So I guess the way that these contracts were allegedly just paid out were in quarterly form, which would make sense if we're talking about a $1.75 million split per. And he apparently, allegedly, got this then. Then at the same exact time that potentially happens, you just have a massive slew of layoffs of around 20% of your employees. So we're not only talking about you finding ways to, I guess, pump money into this company so you can continue allegedly circumventing this salary cap. But you're putting real lives and jobs in danger, potentially. Because at the same time they have to pay that money out, that same sum of money is essentially making up the salary of all of these different employees. And they can't pay them with that anymore. Because even with Wong allegedly investing what he did at the time, that still wouldn't be enough to give everybody their fair share on the payroll. And that still would not be enough to account for other different expenses that these kinds of jobs have to deal with when we're talking about insurance and other health expenses and the like. That's not a good thing. I promise that is not a good thing, to say the least. Like, how is that possible? But you were duped. You were duped in this, though. And again, Steve Ballmer is continuing to stick to that. Well, if you were duped, how is it that you had essentially somebody you've known since college? I'm not even going to play the speculation game and say that they're close or anything like that. But how are you going to have your college guy go out and do the same thing on a lesser scale under your watch if you were truly duped at this time? You'd think at that point, you wouldn't find suspicion in that whatsoever, and you just allowed that. This is all happening under your watch. I mean, come on now. Like, there's no way. And that's what a lot of people have been saying all the way back from when this whole thing started. The fact that Steve Ballmer is one of the richest people in the world and has former jobs serving for tech companies, known to be one of the smartest guys around those parts. And he is claiming that he's been duped in this situation. I don't know how seriously many people can take that. I mean, like, what? Not to mention that, again, the overall number of dollars that he invested in this was crazy. And again, yeah, maybe you're trying to be a little philanthropic here. But as this quote states right here, you are literally giving out an excess shell of money for a company. Like, again, maybe the projects genuinely might have been for a good cause. But when they started struggling and getting desperate to bring in profit, you didn't sense that at all? And you still thought it wise to have this go on to the side just so you could avoid paying Kawhi Leonard at market value. Like, was it really worth it? Is really what this will come down to as well, no matter what the ruling ends up being for this case. Before I get into this quote from the Bleacher Report article, was it really worth it? Because, to be honest, even if you ended up paying Kawhi a little less money overall, at the same time, one, it's still going to make it harder for other teams out there to compete, which is the crux of the entire situation and why they're taking this so seriously. If you can just have fucking players come out here and get money to the side like this on behalf of these teams bringing in suspicious third parties to engineer it, instead of bucking up the allotted money that they have in the legal space to make these deals happen. That is just not fair competition at all. And then even still, you're still being hurt by this. You jumped through all these different hoops just to get Kawhi Leonard in the first place. And again, we don't even have to bury you in that way. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander promptly takes a look at his championship ring, trophy, finals MVP trophy, all of that. Every single last one of those things. You already paid a heavy cost for that. And even though, again, the contract was worth a little less overall, it still commands a large chunk of your salary cap on the team as it is. A huge percentage of that. For a player that has constantly struggled to be healthy since he's gotten there and has had moments where he's looked like he wasn't worth the investment. But you were that desperate to hang on to him for all this time. I mean, seriously. But as this quote from the Bleacher Report article states, on the latest episode of Pablo Torre Finds Out, Pablo Torre reported Ballmer and the Clippers invested $118 million in aspiration in an 18-month period from September 2021 to March 2023. Torre also noted that the Clippers' chief financial officer signed off on a $21 million payment from the team to fund various carbon projects for aspiration in June 2022. End quote. What carbon projects? What the hell were these things looking like? That would be my main question after reading something like that. What exactly could you be investing in when we're talking about that? And again, you allegedly have the chief financial officer of the team signing off on it. Again, under Ballmer's watch in this situation. Like, even if you are the guy who is investing a lump sum, trust me, I would understand, a lump sum of money into the overall organization between, obviously at this time, developing this new stadium in Inglewood, between getting the right amount of money allocated at the right time to the salary cap in the first place that you would need to engineer all these moves in the first place, and then obviously setting up for different accommodations and things of that sort. You're doing all of this, and yet it's, again, not just you investing money at this time in this company, but you have other people in your organization just so happening, again, if this is all the case, they just so happen to stumble upon this and sign off on that under your watch with your money. Tell me how crazy that fucking sounds. But again, you were allegedly duped in this situation. What is stopping the chief financial officer, honestly, because let's be honest, Ballmer should have an idea at this point of what exactly is going on with his money. I'd imagine that he would. But at least when it comes to what's happening with the Clippers organization and with the money being placed in that organization, you would think the chief financial officer would have a say in this. So my thinking is this. You have more than $118 million or so being invested in this company over this time. Just think about this for a second. This is all coming out of the Clippers organization. And you're telling me that Ballmer, as the outright owner, even maybe Wong if he's being named in this as well, you're telling me that they and this chief financial officer for the squad, whoever this may be, they didn't have a single conversation about what was happening. You really, again, we don't know until it's all being put out there. But over the course of a fucking year, an entire fucking year, in 5 or so months, they didn't have a single conversation about money like this potentially going to outside sources like the fucking company in question in this entire case. Like, come on. You have to use your brain in a situation like that. There's got to be some form of direct contact between those two. Because how else are moves going to get made? How else are moves going to get made in a situation like that? Like, it is a literal chain of command in that case. Like, you've got to make sure that if you're the chief financial officer here, all your money in this organization is in fucking order. And that confirmation, or lack thereof, would come from the fucking owner of the team. And again, when we go down different levels, you'd have other people around this chief financial officer who would probably be reported to in this situation to then send that information down to lower levels up until you get to the general manager, so that the general manager of a team can know how much flexibility they have in terms of making a newly constructed roster or finding out all of the different resources, materials, trade pieces, whatever they need to engineer to make that happen at any point, whether it be the trade deadline or the off season. Make sure they have enough cap space to go out and get people in free agency. Make sure they have enough draft capital to pull off certain deals if they're looking for that. A literal chain. You're telling me that this financial officer did not find anything fishy about $118 million in this time span being gone just like that, just to go to aspiration, and to not have a single conversation with Steve Ballmer at all. What kind of sense does that make? And I wouldn't be surprised if in one of the next reports that comes out about this entire ordeal, we get insight into what that looked like. Because, I'm literally just thinking about this off the top of my head. And it's like, that is just so fucking wild. All that money is disappearing like that and going to a third party, and you are standing by saying nothing about this, just blindly signing off on it. I find that hard to believe. I truly do. And it's just, for the team in general, it's just a terrible spot to be in. As I stated in the last video, there are a number of different ways that this could end up going, and I think I mentioned at least one specific penalty that they could face. I also mentioned what happened in the Joe Smith situation after all those years of the Timberwolves and he circumventing the salary cap. So according to the same Forbes article from Toprick right here, the quote towards the closing of the article that states this. All right, end quote. If the NBA's investigation finds clear evidence of circumvention between Leonard and the Clippers, Silver could fine Ballmer up to $7.5 million. Relative peanuts given his estimated 154.6. Let's get that correct. That's billion with a B net worth. Strip the Clipper of multiple first-round picks and void Leonard's contract. If the league finds that the Clippers only arranged a deal between Aspiration and Leonard that was meant to circumvent the salary cap, the penalties may be limited to a $5.5 million fine, one stripped first-round pick, and the voiding of Leonard's contract. Ballmer's multiple investments into the company may be the swing factor. End quote. Sorry, let's break it down. That last sentence says it all. You can have all these other people in this organization, like the chief financial officer and Wong named as people who were able to get money over to Aspiration when they were clearly in need of it at the time, while also getting some kind of reward in this case by having Aspiration dish out this alleged contract to Kawhi Leonard. It's one thing to say that, but again, at the head of it all is a person who is literally one of the richest people in the world, period. And all of this is going down with your money, and you don't know about it. You are claiming that they blindsided you, that they duped you into doing this against your own will. That is what Ballmer has consistently been saying. That has been what he has consistently been preaching at this point in time. He had no knowledge of this whatsoever. How believable would that truly be? Because, let's be honest, what exactly, at what point did you figure that something was up? Because that's the thing. Like, if he genuinely didn't know, then this is a non-story. But with all of the investments that have been made over this time, did you continue to invest into what you thought was a company trying to promote the right stuff? They gave you a slew of red flags about what they were actually doing, and you still decided to go out and invest in them while also relying on them, I guess, to maybe prevent a whistleblower of some kind from just spilling the tea on everything. Although, again, that wouldn't even necessarily need to be the case because it ended up happening anyways. To have a little sort of kind of blackmail thing going on and have them pay Kawhi Leonard a little bit extra so that you could coast along. Like, that would be the most telling thing to find out. Okay? Again, all of this is allegation. Truly, it really is. Nothing's been confirmed yet. But if there is knowledge found out at some point that Ballmer knew about the corrupt actions of this company and he still decided to invest heavily in them after that went down, we're going to have a problem. If it actually lines up with him, because again, I guess he's also under the notion that, hey, as soon as the events that transpired in March 2023 took place, which essentially got them, in legal trouble in the first place, that is the exact moment in which they stopped funding, or I guess given different sponsorships and stuff like that to Aspiration. We're going to see about that. We truly will. All right. So, to break it down even further, there's a discrepancy in penalties. Because, I guess, it could go up to as high as $7.5 million. But again, that is only if the alleged circumvention, is clear between the Clippers organization and Kawhi Leonard. If there is a true connection there, that is the penalty that they face. And along with first round picks being stripped away and the complete nullification of Kawhi Leonard's contract. So they probably end up losing him in this situation for essentially nothing. And they are going to be completely stripped of all draft capital they have left. Like, they don't have first round picks for a while as it is. And all of them are pretty much going to be gone if that's what it ends up coming down to. Seriously. They'd already put themselves in a cap strap situation, and they've already given themselves a heavy disadvantage in terms of draft capital over the next few years because of the sheer amount of trades that they've made. And it all does root back to the one that Kawhi Leonard initiated so that they could get Paul George. And obviously, a lot of the influence that his uncle had in that entire ordeal. Oh, but that's an additional story to this. Like, Tory is pulling out all the stops in this shit. They got a fucking screenshot, going back to this Bleacher Report article, they got a fucking screenshot of a text message between him and a member of the Aspiration Company at the time that, according to him, he claims, allegedly correlates to a mention of the fucking $21 million contract that Kawhi Leonard was getting from this company at the time, allegedly. Like, they are not fucking around. And that is my point when I'm talking about lining up all the ducks in a fucking row. Like, all of this might seem like sheer coincidence right now. And for all we know, up until it's actually proven, until there's actually a decision made on this, it could very well just be that. But at the same time, it lines up too damn perfectly from the outside looking in. And that is the issue right now. So I'm telling you just got to be fucking truthful about this. And so far, it ain't looking pretty for the Clippers. Because if all these things are true, if even one of these boxes at this point, with the way that this is stacked up, if even one of the boxes on this checklist end up being confirmed, it is a wrap for the Clippers. And ironically enough, they already understand that. Multiple article reports here state that there was a recent report in which they straight up outlined they do not view Kawhi Leonard as a focal point for their future anymore. And honestly, I think anybody could really tell you that just off of how much money he costs and how old he is already. But as this quote from this Sports Illustrated article by Gatum states, the Clippers are done basing their future around Leonard per ESPN's Baxter Holmes. Multiple general managers and executives across the NBA expect Leonard to play out the remaining 2 seasons on the extension he signed in 2024, but his future remains up in the air after that. One former Clippers staffer told Holmes, "They're done building around Kawhi. They know that, and he knows that." End quote. Again, from the surface level, it's like, this is not a fucking bombshell, in all honesty. Like, I mean, truly. Like, all you gotta do is just understand how much Kawhi is worth right now and how high of a percentage that takes up on a team, and the fact that he's already 34 years old, will be 36 by that specific time. It just has not been a successful tenure with the Clippers at all. Like, again, in between all of the injuries, the fact that he has not been available enough, and the fact that in some cases, from what he projected to be, even though some of the averages look a little bit better, people will tell you he's taken a step back. And that's not a promising sign for a player who was once regarded as the saving face of this franchise. If he could continue to remain healthy and be that ever unrelenting playoff closer that he proved to be in that NBA Finals run with the Raptors. He has not recaptured that since. And the entire core as a whole is getting older, even when you look at some of the players that they've signed in the offseason. This window that they're trying to carve out is not going to last for much longer. Chris Paul is already fucking 40, and he's retiring after this season. He already confirmed that. James Harden ain't getting any younger. Brook Lopez is like 37, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he's 37. Your core four guys are not players that you should be trying to hang on to for the long term anymore. And at the front of all this chaos would be Kawhi Leonard. That is a fact. He's just worth too damn much compared to everybody else, even with them allegedly trying to circumvent the shit. Again, what was it truly worth? What was it truly worth? His contract is still one of the largest in the league. It did you no good if you did end up doing this to try to find an illegal way to get off of paying him the full deal. It wasn't worth it. Like, in the same way that a fine would be pennies worth to Ballmer, this would be the same situation right here. $28 million and potentially a little more if other reports from Turry happen to be the case. Just to get around paying him a full 4-year or so deal at this time. And just to ensure that he stuck around. Like, what the fuck? It's not worth it. And again, not only does this have major implications for the team as a whole, but it directly affects their future. Quite literally. As this quote states right here, one of the worst kept secrets in the NBA is that the Clippers are gearing up to have large amounts of cap space in both the 2026 and 2027 off seasons, where they want to take another big swing at a fresh free agent class. End quote. In at least one of the next 2 seasons, they'd probably be trying to jump ship, because there are a lot of desirable free agents at this time. You know, I've heard that at this point in, I think, 2027, Giannis was set to be one. Nikola Jokic was set to be one. And that's the tip of the iceberg. A slew of really talented players who could change the outlook for a few teams in the NBA or on the market. And you'd really think the Clippers would want to be stuck with that shit, while not even getting the results to warrant that in the first place. No. But if the second apron and going over that makes things much harder for teams in the first place, I could imagine that a scandal of this nature, if they prove to be guilty of any implication in this whatsoever, their chances of getting anything out of either one of these free agent classes would be severely hindered. So not only do you potentially have to move on from Kawhi Leonard in the event of a voided contract by getting absolutely nothing in return, but you are going to be stuck in constant purgatory. A damn near decades-long rebuild. Like, this could be a massive setback because you don't have the draft capital as it is. And you figure that in this time you could try to get a superstar to join your roster and kind of restart, renew a championship window of some kind. You're not going to be able to do that if they find you guilty in this. You're going to be stuck with your team mostly as constructed. And every single move that you do make is going to be under a fucking microscope. You're not going to be able to go out and make the big splashes. Because honestly, even if you still have some ability to do it, the rest of the league would be put on notice at this point about those kinds of tactics. Who would realistically want to negotiate a trade or a sign and trade? Who would want to do that with a team who, again, it didn't help them because they haven't even won a fucking title. But who would want to negotiate deals like that with a team that is now, if the Clippers are found to be guilty in this, labeled as being an unethical trade partner? Their entire reputation would be ruined in that aspect. Nobody would want to do deals with them anymore. They would not let them get away with that. That would linger in the back of their minds at every moment. And they would truly be missing out on some great stuff because of it. Again, all for just a few $1 million. Peanuts to Steve Ballmer. But he got duped. Okay. And yeah, honestly, this quote right here from this Forbes article from Topper actually does have a pretty interesting ring to it. So to just go through this quote right here. If nothing else, the Leonard circumvention scandal perhaps underscores the need for the NBA to have more oversight in the players' endorsement deals. The NCAA set up an independent college sports commission to oversee all name, image, and likeness deals worth more than $600 as part of the House vs. NCAA settlement. Does the NBA need to follow suit to ensure that players aren't being paid extra from sponsors that aren't requiring them to actually endorse their products? That is a great question. And this plays into the notion of this being a no-show job, if that's also true. Because again, like the whole point of a sponsorship deal is for you to honor your contract as an athlete, as a celebrity, doing whatever you got to do to get that brand more exposure, whether it be appearing on commercials, whether it be doing specific ad placements, with you like just happening to have this product on your person or something of that sort. And the second you either don't want to honor that deal anymore, or the second you start promoting a different brand, that sponsorship is usually terminated. So why in this entire time, again, knowing how introverted Kawhi Leonard can be, if he truly wasn't showing up for this and wasn't expected to, why exactly were they allegedly still paying him all this money to the side? Why? That again is not necessarily fair. Now, I don't really know. Again, we don't really know if that is a route in which they could take. Like, yes, that's happening on a college level across all sports. But to now try to implement that for the NBA in this situation would be very weird. Yet, as uncomfortable as this might be, if this case goes a certain way, that's probably going to be the question that they have to ask themselves. Because if one team, if even a single player on a team is doing it, the NBA is going to want to make an example out of that player, as all of the different penalties suggest. But they are also going to want to do every single thing in their power to prevent something like this from happening again. And if it takes an independent commission to do the same thing in the NBA level, and maybe with a much larger baseline than just $600, because we are quite literally talking about big boy money in pro basketball. So that wouldn't fucking cut it. I'd say anything over, honestly, like, it would be hard to put a baseline on that right now, but honestly, anything over, like, not this kind of amount in general, I think they would start out, at least, seeing is, Kawhi Leonard's already making this large sum of money even before that kicks in. Anything over $10 to $20 million a year for a player, potentially, if this was to be implemented, would be there to start out right now. At least. Because again, I just, at least in the modern day right now, this is the most outright example of something like this potentially going down. But they could also take past experiences with a guy like Joe Smith into account and lower it to any deal worth more than like $900K. They really could do that. And it would truly hurt a little bit for the lower end players who are fighting for some of their fucking lives just to get some of these 6-figure and 7-figure deals in the NBA. To know that they can't even be trusted to make their money in peace. They have to have something being watched over them because of the actions of an entirely different person in Kawhi Leonard, who is an established superstar in the league, who's made more than a fortune that could pass down for generations. Allegedly. But again, for all of the twists that this seems to be taking, it is far from done. It's far from done. So again, this is something that just has to keep on getting tracked until this investigation is up. But again, I say all of that, and I think I did a fair job covering all of this. It's safe to say that you just have to keep on tracking the situation until it is truly done. And we really get to see what exactly happened for real. Everything else is allegation and speculation at this point. We don't know. We don't know. But a lot of things are just being uncovered on a consistent basis. So at some point, we gonna find out. In other news, the Hawks would trade Kobe Bufkin to Brooklyn for cash. I mean, honestly, like, it ain't much. You could say that the Hawks could afford to get rid of Kobe Bufkin, I guess. And to even get any amount of cash back for him is, like, okay. Honestly, I would view Kobe Bufkin as more of a loser here. I mean, like, yeah, Brooklyn's a trash fucking team. And yes, for a player of his kind to go to a roster that is just so abhorrently constructed, he will probably get some playing time. At least he can say that will happen for him, because it wasn't happening in Atlanta at all. However, even that might not be a guarantee. 5 fucking first round picks in this draft for the Nets. You have Saroff, Traul, and Joman as young rising guards who the Nets will probably be looking to develop, especially Joman. Not to mention all of the younger talent that they have at this point. Or do you even want to call them talent? They are in just such an awkward spot to where I don't really know what's going to happen with Kobe Bufkin at this point. So again, he could get playing time, but it ain't going to mean much. He may not get playing time at all because they are trying to establish some kind of a rebuild. And they're trying to maximize their hit rate on this young talent that they've acquired over the past couple seasons, especially with you fucking drafted 5 picks in the first round. You're playing damn near every single one of those guys if you can. So even though Kobe Bufkin's a young lad, at the same time, when you look at his play, he hasn't proven enough to have this kind of seniority going on. He just hasn't. Like, I don't know. He is only played in 27 games, hasn't started a single one, and again, in both of them, he's been dealing with injuries and stuff like that. Again, maybe a change of scenery might help him, but it's too crowded in that guard room. And they still have Cameron Thomas right now, who, again, is looking to essentially prove himself. Like, this is essentially a tender. He's got 1 year to showcase a true ability of his talent on a roster that wins something. So they might not have enough time to try to string along Kobe Bufkin in this situation. I just have to be honest. Like that's just not a great situation for him to be put in. Michael Malone will be a full-time NBA analyst on ESPN. It does make sense from my perspective. I honestly thought that he would be a head coach who would be well sought after in the offseason. That obviously did not happen. And so, with him still being a free agent at this point, maybe if something comes along, he'll take up a job. But honestly, as long as that's not the case, I don't really see a problem with the move. I mean, his insight was very good in terms of talking about game, action, and breaking down a lot of the deeper information. So, with them now being in the mix of this media rights deal, if you can get somebody with that kind of expertise, you best take a swing at it. And that is essentially what this Michael Malone hire does for ESPN. The Hornets would do something incredibly fucked up. So, Keyontae Johnson is a recent pick, and he's had a pretty tumultuous just time at this point. Obviously, he had like a period of time in K-State where he like suffered a heart condition, I believe, that forced him out of play. He worked his way back into the lineup and was able to get drafted in 2023. But in the NBA, he hasn't necessarily got a lot of burn. He's played in just 9 games at this point, and those were in the 2023-24 season. I suppose that he's just been around different G League rosters over this point of time. And I guess maybe something came up to where the Hornets are like, we're going to take a chance on the man. And then just today, they waive him off of their roster. So I'm like, damn, okay, that's how you feeling? How are you going to try to give him a chance to reassert himself in the league, but then cut him? That's really weird. Oh, yeah. And to cap things off, Tyler Herro would undergo foot/ankle surgery. Situation came up in the offseason. Suppose just doing general basketball runs and practice, and he must have busted this area of his body. Now, as a result of it, he's got to take the time out to go get it checked out and then fixed completely. So to fully heal from this, they state that he's going to be out for the start of the season, and he's going to miss at least the next 8 weeks. So again, going from now to then, that could essentially be up until early November, late October at the most in terms of his possible return to NBA action. We're going to see whenever Tyler Herro does come back, though, because, obviously we want to see him get healthy. This is going to be an interesting step for him this season, because even though he had a little bit of a mini breakout season last year, at the same time, I don't know, there are still a lot of questions. Yeah, he was at his most durable, got his first All-Star appearance, but at the same time, is he going to truly assert himself as the focal point of this team? Because on the outside looking in, it feels like the Heat have constructed this roster more so around Bam Adebayo and his skill set than Tyler Herro and his. There could be a little bit of a balance there when you're getting backcourt mates who could take the defensive pressure off of Tyler Herro so that he's not constantly picked on in the pick and rolls and not constantly being just absolutely toasted on that front in isolation. But at the same time, Kawhi obviously was a massive steal, I would think, for them in last year's draft. And the fact that he can give you that kind of size and that kind of shooting, if he continues to develop it right, at the center position, with his defense as well. You're telling me that wasn't meant for him to be a complementary piece alongside Bam Adebayo? To allow him to play his natural position at the 4 instead of the 5? So if I'm Tyler Herro, I'm thinking about taking that next step. Truthfully. The glimpses are there. But the mindset of the Heat might still not be totally committed to making him the main guy. Although, again, obviously this is going to be their first full season, I should say, in a few years without Jimmy Butler. And honestly, even though Tyler Herro did have a good season, at the same time, a lot of the earlier games and stuff like that, every single player, including Tyler Herro on that team, was certainly affected by all this weird shit around the Jimmy Butler situation. Reactions on the part of the team, his own actions, it was a lot for them to bear during that time. So maybe if Tyler Herro can get running off of the ground immediately, as soon as he gets back into game action in a perfect world, maybe then the conversation could start to shift a little bit. But as far as I see it right now, I don't know. It would be really hard to say. He's obviously a good player. He's obviously going to be one of their core guys. But it feels like they have a lot more attention on trying to fill out this roster to Bam Adebayo's needs and not Tyler Herro's. Especially when considering that you just dump Duncan Robinson away like that. But hey, who am I to judge, man? Alright, that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.